everyone, so for today's video I'm going to give you a tour of my bookshelf. I'm always rearranging my bookshelf. I have like all these like little trinkets and stuff, and I'm always rearranging, and then I always take books off my bookshelves once it's full. Right now I took out a lot of books. If you saw my book sacrifice video, I took out a lot, and I also rearranged my bookshelf, and I really like how I have it now. That's why I'm doing this book tour. Bookshelf tour. What? So like the bottom shelves are kind of empty now because I took out a lot of books, and I also put like books at like the top shelf, which you will see later. Before I used to have just like a bunch of random stuff on there, but now I figured that I'd need more space with all the books that I read, and I was kind of tired of constantly taking books off my shelves and putting them away. Having books like on the top like portion of the bookshelf kind of gave me a lot more space for my books. So this book tour will be in two parts. Part 1 is obviously today, and then next week I'm going to show you guys part 2. So let's get into it. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of my whole bookshelf. That's the top part that I was talking about. And then going down, that's my bookshelf. It's from IKEA, just in case you were curious. I have a Disney snow globe back there that kind of holds up my books. So I have the Infernal Devices, and then I also have the Mortal Instruments series. Then I have the Hunger Games trilogy. I have The Host by Stephenie Meyer, as well as the Twilight series. And then at the end there, I have the Divergent trilogy. So I'm going to go over the first like 2 rows of my bookshelf. That will be part 1 of this video. So here I have The Sugar Queen by Sarah Addison Allen, favorite book of all time. I have 2 books by Laurie Halse Anderson. The first is Speak, and the second is Winter Girls. Amazing middle school, high school reads. Great stuff. I have Go Ask Alice by Anonymous, and this is like a story told in journal entries about a girl going through her life with her addiction to drugs. Shattered Mirror by Amelia Atwater Rhodes. This is probably like one of the first vampire books I ever read. Massive by Julia Bell. I don't remember the whole story. I read this a long time ago, but it deals with like weight issues, so if you're into one of those books. Next I have She Said Yes, and this is like a journal entries and like a memoir-esque kind of thing about one of the students who was killed during the Columbine shooting. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas by John Boyne. It's an amazing book, and it deals with the Holocaust. A great read, and it's real quick too. I have Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. If you're into classics, I think this is one of those where it's just like, you gotta read it. Prom Nights from Hell, and this features a bunch of different authors, including Stephenie Meyer, only reason why I read it. Ransom My Heart by Meg Cabot. Originally, I thought this was just kind of like this innocent story, and then it turned out to not be appropriate for children, so 18 and over. Next I have Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, and I felt like an idiot reading this book because I'd heard so many great things about it and how interesting and complex the whole story was, but at the end I was just like, I didn't really get it. I have 2 books from Cora Carmack, and the first is Losing It, and then the companion book is Keeping Her. Next I have Kristen Chenoweth's memoir, A Little Bit Wicked. Need I say more? I have 1 Agatha Christie book, and then There Were None. I really have to go back and read this. And last in this little compartment is The Awakening by Kate Chopin, and this is like one of the only books that I read from school that I really liked. Moving on to the second compartment here, the first book I have is Stolen by Lucy Christopher, and this is about a girl who gets kidnapped. There are parts of the story that feel really sluggish, but overall the story is amazing. Next I have Matched by Ali Condi, and this is a trilogy that deals with like dystopian kind of elements, so if you're into that. Next I have I Am the Cheese by Robert Cormier. I read this in middle school. It was great if you're into twist endings. Next I have The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens by Sean Covey, and I actually had to like read this for one of my classes, but like they have really good advice in here. I have Old Magic by Marian Curley. This is an old novel. I don't know if you'd find it like on the bookshelves now, but interesting read. Next I have Facade by Naira Dawn, and this is a new adult novel, so I'm just warning you. Next I have Family Tree by Barbara Delinsky. I remember liking the book. I don't remember all of it. And next I have A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I'd always loved like the Christmas specials about this, but I'd actually never read the book, so if you've never read the book. And I have a second Charles Dickens book, A Tale of Two Cities. I had to read this for school. And next I have Before Midnight by Cameron Dokie. Like I always say, I love retelling of fairy tales, and this is a retelling of Cinderella. Next I have Room by Emma Donoghue, and this is probably in like the top 5 of my favorite books. Next I have Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, and I had to read this for school as well. Next I have I Know What You Did Last Summer by Lois Duncan. To be perfectly honest, I don't remember a lot of this book. Next I have Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel, and going into this I didn't really know about all the kind of fantastical elements going on, but it was a very interesting read. And then I have the first 2 books of the Daughters of the Moon series by Lynn Ewing. And the first is Goddess of the Night, and then the second is Into the Cold Fire. Moving on to the third shelf, the first book I have is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I really enjoyed this book. I also had to read it for school. Next, I have Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick, and this is the first book in the Hush Hush saga. Next, I have Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. I watched the movie, I thought it was alright, and I read the book, and I also thought it was alright. Next, I have If I Stay by Gail Forman, and then the sequel to it, Where She Went. Amazing read. Next, I have Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. I'm pretty sure everyone still has to read this for school. I had to read it for school as well, and I really enjoyed it. Next is The Freedom Writer's Diary, and I absolutely love the movie. It's one of my favorite movies, and I decided to read the diary that went along with it. Next I have The Princess Bride by William Goldman. I know everyone really loves it. My friend is obsessed with the book and the movie, but I just thought it was alright. Next I have Eon by Alison Goodman, and then the sequel, Iona. My friend suggested it to me because I was looking for like a dragon book, because I'd never read like any books revolving around dragons. I still don't think it's my cup of tea, but it was an okay read. And then I have 3 John Green books. The first is The Fault in Our Stars, the second is Looking for Alaska, and the second is Paper Towns. And in the last part of this first row, I have Let It Snow, and these are 3 like Christmas short stories by John Green, Maureen Johnson, and Lauren Miracle. I have 2 books from Philippa Gregory. The first is The Other Boleyn Girl, and then the second is The Queen's Fool. Next I have Death Be Not Proud by John Gunther, and this is an amazing, heartbreaking read. Next I have Night Road by Kristen Hanna, and this is the only book I've read by her, but this was seriously amazing. Next I have Falling Under by Gwen Hayes, and this is either a trilogy or a series. I'm not sure, but a lot more people need to talk about this book. Next I have The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, and this is just one of those books that you just definitely have to read. Okay, so the book that everyone really needs to read and everyone needs to talk about because it's amazing. The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer by Michelle Hodkin. Next I have Madness by Marja Hornbacher, and this is about like her dealing with her bipolar disorder. Next I have Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I had to read this for school. It was my senior year and I was just over it. I really have to reread it because I felt like there were a lot of good elements to it, but at the time I was just like, I'm done with school. I have 2 books from Leslie Kagan. The first is Land of 100 Wonders, and then I have Whispers in the Dark. And next I have Fallen by Lauren Kate, and this is the first in the series. I really liked the first book. The second book was alright, but my friend told me to keep on going with the series because it gets better, so let me know. Alright, so moving on to the second row of my bookshelf, I have here, I have the Ciate like advent calendar thing that they have. I got this I think 2 or 3 years ago. And then I just have a bunch of my perfume here, and I have like a little owl thing that I got from Fossil. And then I have this little ring holder to hold my rings. Alright, so the first book I have here is Torment by Lauren Kate. This is the second book that I was talking about earlier. Next I have The Bean Trees by Barbara Kingsolver. I had to read this for a book report I had to do in school. Don't remember a lot of it, unfortunately. Next I have Dark Angel by David Klass, and this I remember really liking, and I read this back in middle school, so. Next I have To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, and this is also a book I had to read for school, but I remember reading it before then. And again, I feel like this is just like one of those books in life that you have to read. Every Day by David Levithan, an amazing read. Just amazing. Next I have Jane by April Lindner. And this is kind of a retelling of Jane Eyre. I have 2 books from Lois Lowry. The first is The Giver, the second is Messenger. I have 3 books from Gregory Maguire. The first is Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister. And then I have Wicked, and then the second book, Son of a Witch. Jellicoe Road by Melanie Marchetta. Very confusing. I didn't know if I liked it at the end of the book. It was just very confusing for me. Next is Orchid House by Cindy Martinussen. And the only reason why I read this was because it revolved around a Filipino family, and I'm Filipino. And last on that part here, I have Of Two Minds by Perry Nodelman and Carol Matas. Moving on, the book I have here is The Usual Rules by Joyce Maynard, and it is a 9/11 story. Next I have Cut by Patricia McCormack. I read this back in middle school and I really enjoyed it. Next I have Atonement by Ian McEwan. I haven't watched the movie, but the book was just very hard to get through. I have 2 books from Jamie Maguire, and these are 2 new adult books. The first is Beautiful Disaster, and the companion is Walking Disaster. If you are of age, definitely check it out. These books are amazing. I have Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and I recently talked about this in my past book wrap-up video. This is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles. Next I have Jacqueline Mitchard's The Breakdown Lane. I read this a while ago, and as well as Time is a River by Mary Alice Monroe. Next I have 3 Cups of Tea by Greg Mortensen and David Oliver Rellin, and I actually have a book review of this book, so if you're interested in that, please check it out. Next I have Keeper of Light and Dust by Natasha Mustert. I remember parts of this book and I remember parts that I liked, but overall I just thought it was an okay novel. Next I have The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson, and I actually have a review on this book as well. Next is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. Watched the movie with Rachel McAdams and it was so confusing and so all over the place, and I decided to read the book and it kind of cleared things up, but just don't watch the movie. Next I have Left Drowning by Jessica Park, and this is also a new adult novel, so make sure you are of age before reading this. So right there is like one of those boards with inspirational kind of quotes, and you guys used to see that a lot more in my old setup for my fashion and beauty videos. And then I have 4 Bath & Body Works body mists, and then I have a Fujifilm Instax, and then next to it I have this little notebook where I keep all of my Polaroid pictures that I take while I'm traveling, because it has this like really pretty world map on it, and I thought it would be a great place to put all of my little memories. And then right there I have a little box made out of an orange peel. Right, so this must be a long video because my battery is almost dying. So I hope you enjoyed part 1 of my bookshelf tour. Again, I just kind of went over like the top part of my bookshelf and then the first 2 rows. And then for part 2 next week, I will go over the bottom 2. Alright, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you another time. Goodbye!